Welcome. Within this video I would like to comment on the topic of bitcoins, and I would like to separate this video into two different parts. Firstly, I would like to comment on the big picture regarding bitcoins, different possibilities people are discussing about, and in the second part I would like to give an opinion on what you could do. Now firstly, when you look on the internet and you see how people are responding to bitcoins, you see all kinds of different opinions, and I would like to summarize these right now. So on the one hand, you have people who say, well, you know, this is the best invention ever. We all are aware of the big issues the current financial and economic system has, the problems of the fractional reserve banking, the induced stock market crashes, other problems such as inflation, and now there will be a currency which is not influenced by a central bank, and it will be a complete game changer, and this is something which the elites are really panicking about. Now let's call this opinion the meta level 1 opinion. Now the meta level 2 opinion is, well, it was started by the elites as well. Of course they have a very high number of resources. They took it over at a very early stage. They have huge ownership in bitcoins. They have a lot of control. So of course the banks will never give up on their monopoly on money, and they are behind bitcoins as well, and they will control it and manipulate it like they do it with other markets today, like the stock market, the currency market, etc. And then maybe there's a third group of people who argues that, well, you know, bitcoins was started in Asia by very liberal people with good ideas. It's completely decentralized, nobody can control it, and even if the Western elites would like to control it, this is just not possible anymore, etc. Allow me to state some different points. Now, of course, when you're very conspiracy-minded, you tend to believe that, okay, the big dynasties in this world, such as the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, etc., the big banking elites, etc., of course they control the game. And most likely this makes more sense. So the official explanation is that it's not completely known who actually started Bitcoin, who's behind it. It's argued that there wouldn't be control over Bitcoins. But unfortunately, it's quite likely that this is part of an overall agenda. Yeah, so the agenda is to get rid of physical cash at some point, to only have digital money. And you know, from history and experience, we know that the elites are always not 1 but 2 steps ahead, and such events like the popularization of digital currency and cryptocurrencies is unlikely to be a natural development. Yeah, I have to admit, when I first saw the idea behind bitcoins around 5-6 years ago, I was thinking, well, I mean, in theory this is quite illegal because there is a monopoly on money. I mean, in a country you cannot just create your own currency and use it as a means similar to money. But apparently there are suddenly ways where exactly that could happen, that there's a digital currency, it's not controlled by a central bank, and you can even buy physical goods with it, it can be exchanged. Now also, a second point is that, you know, when it comes to the traditional currencies, we have a very high increase in regulation during the last years and decades, especially when it comes to topics such as money laundering, and obviously for criminal organizations, it's very attractive to use a digital currency where it's not easily traceable who did which kind of transaction, who paid for what, who bought what. So, that's another argument to say, well, the big elites are of course behind it, and they have control over it now, and they will keep having control in the future, and they may even, certain organizations may even abuse this digital currency for dark activities. So overall I would say that it is more likely that the big corporations, big elites have control over Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it's less likely that the official story that it's a decentralized currency which works within a network, etc., blockchains. It's less. Unfortunately, it's quite likely that the official explanation doesn't really represent the reality we have at the moment. So that leads us to the second part of this video. I mean, Bitcoins were trading around $7,300 recently, now they came off a bit. And the question is, well, this is amazing, yeah? I mean, we're talking about something like 6,000% increase over a 7-year period. And on the internet you can read of stories where people claim that they bought it at an early stage, they left it, and now they made a fortune out of it. However, given that there are forces behind Bitcoin right now which will manipulate the price, it's of course a very risky market to get involved with. So there are two possibilities. One is that Bitcoin will continue to increase to ridiculous levels. Some people talk about a $10,000 price tag, some about a $50,000 price tag. Others talk about a $100,000 price tag, etc., and even higher values 20 years down the line. Now, of course, there will be massive volatility in between, so it's a very volatile market. People, it seems like a bubble right now, where people come with very high price targets. Now, other people say, well, this whole project will be over soon, and banks will do their very best to fight against it, and there will be a massive crash in the market, and it will come down big time. It will be a bursted bubble, similar to stock market crashes. Now, here's what you could do if you want, just to see what happens. You could just buy a small amount in those Bitcoins and see what happens. Buy it over dips, and then leave it for a few years, right? Consider this money lost. So either the whole project completely crashes and may come to an end in some way or another, or the insanity continues and the price goes up more and more and more. One of the two outcomes. Whatever the outcome will be in, let's say, 5 to 10 years, it will give us some information on which of the opinions were actually more realistic. Yeah? So, are the people who are more conspiracy-minded correct? Or are the other people who have a more idealist mindset, were they actually right? And the Bitcoins represented one of the most significant evolutions in modern history. Now, personally, I would rather tend to be more skeptical, and I would expect also massive market volatility in Bitcoins. Remember that as long as you trade it in a way where you cannot get stopped out, you can hold it over a few years, for example. But if you trade derivatives on it, like CFDs, contracts for difference, you have to be very careful because you can be stopped out, like in the Forex market. So I would expect Bitcoins to become more popular. I would expect that brokers will offer exchange ranges, exchange rates such as dollar to Bitcoin, Bitcoin to dollar, euro to Bitcoin, Bitcoin to euro, pound to Bitcoin, Bitcoin to pound. And initially those spreads will be high, and then over time the tradability will probably improve. So it could be that this digital currency will be included in the offering of most foreign exchange brokers, and that the trading will become more and more liquid, and then and if the use of Bitcoin increases like it did in the past, it may become a more and more significant means of payment. So this would be the base case. I would think that big companies and big groups have influence over the market structure already, and this should also definitely be considered. Yeah? I think that unfortunately the trend will continue towards cashless money, and will move towards digital currencies in different ways. This is not a good thing, but it will probably happen anyways. And of course other cryptocurrencies will also become more and more popular. Even some big banks, investment banks now try to create their own cryptocurrencies. But I think even if you believe in the meta level 1 explanation, the banks will definitely suffer from the fact that the monopoly on money as it is at the moment will change. And in general, of course, it's a good thing that there are alternatives to the fractional reserve and central bank system we have at the moment. There are severe issues with the financial and economic system as it is today. We're talking about central banks changing the price of money, the interest rate. We talk about stock market bubbles and crashes. We talk about negative interest rates. We talk about high debt rates of countries. These are all very severe issues which will ultimately harm every citizen in the country. Yeah, and will affect the national budget, will affect a lot of things which are very relevant for society. So yeah, this would be these are my general thoughts on the subject. As always be careful, yeah. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't get influenced by this hype. Do your research, look at history, look at other bubbles from the past. Yeah, we're talking about known events 100, even 200 years ago, as well as recent events. Stock markets are at their highest at the moment. It's very likely that there will be a big correction within the next, let's say, 20 months. So we are at a point in time where different markets are heated up, and some of these are definitely overheated. So always consider that. And when you see these kind of articles in the newspaper, the public media, you know that we are at a stage where things change from heated to overheated. Anyways, it's a very, very interesting subject. It's very exciting. It will definitely have an impact in one way or another. And maybe in a few years we will also be able to give a better judgment with regards to the big picture.